Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a good Friday. I'm Greg Swartz. I'm the director of the Water of Life, and as hopefully maybe some of you, since you're returning now, know this is a weekly thing I do called Big Man We Dram, which is a little bit of a web live stream talk show of sorts with different people throughout the whiskey industry. And this week, we're going to talk a little bit about Bruichladdich. Now, that might not come as a big surprise to a lot of you because we've talked about Bruichladdich a lot. But if you've seen the film, you know that it plays a pretty central role in our film. And this week, I'm very excited to be joined by Erica Beindorff, who I hope I'm saying her last name right. So without further ado, I'm going to bring her in here. And hello and welcome.
Hello. So good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Yeah.
Now, it's funny because I wasn't sure on your surname because, I was pretty, I'm from Pennsylvania, and there's a lot of German last names in Pennsylvania, so you get pretty used to some of the rules of pronunciation. So,
yeah, no, Beindorff, you nailed it, and that is my maiden name, and that's what everybody from work knows me as. And then now I have Skolnick, which is no easier, so I go by both. So, absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for joining me, first of all.
Happy to be here.
On a Friday you're on the East Coast, so it's a little later.
I just poured myself a little something, so we're good.
Well, I did as well. So
there we go. See, it doesn't matter what coast you're on.
I have to limit myself to one right now because I actually need to go pick up some beer later. I have to drive to go pick up my beer.
Smart.
I ordered it, and I have to go pick it up at the brewery. It's a whole thing, but
what's life?
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about your history at the company and how you got involved with Bruichladdich and what exactly you do?
Yeah.
Before we get tucked into some other stuff?
We won't talk 45 minutes about it, but I can do it in a really quick spiel. So essentially, I've been in the beverage industry, alcohol industry for a number of years prior to me coming on board with the parent company that is with Bruichladdich, which is Remy Cointreau. I was with Brown-Forman, which many people know as Woodford Reserve, Jack Daniels. If you've ever heard of those brands, I'm not sure. Maybe you have. And
boutique brands.
Yeah, just they're small, craft distilleries, no big deal. And then I ended up moving over to Remy Cointreau, which is the company that I work for now. Now, Remy Cointreau, like I said, is essentially the parent company. We have a lot of different brands underneath them, and Bruichladdich being one of them. So essentially, I was brought on to be a whiskey ambassador. So I oversaw a handful of states. At one time, I think it was up to 15 or so. And I am located down in Atlanta, Georgia. So there was a lot of time, fly-wise, hotel-wise. I got to the point where I didn't even need to show my ID at some of these hotels because they're like, yeah, good to see you again. Glad you're back. So anybody that's ever been in that sort of atmosphere to constantly be on the road could probably say that that's a good way of putting it. But super awesome company. Honestly, I was in love with Bruichladdich before I even started working for Remy Cointreau. And I think I kind of mentioned it to you. It's a really easy company to work for and a brand to love because it's just really, really good spirit in general. So I don't ever have to fluff or make up stories or anything like that because there is not really any smoke and mirrors at this distillery. So that's the beautiful part. Yeah.
You don't have to know dragons and fairies and Loch Ness monster stories.
Exactly. I mean, I could go into it. I've seen the Loch Ness in the lake, but no, we won't go there.
Do you know, it's funny. I was an exchange student in Scotland when I was in college, and that's when I first started drinking whiskey. But I'd never been to Loch Ness until this whole movie kind of grew out of my 10th anniversary. My wife and I, she'd never been to Scotland, and we went there. And we kind of did the North Coast 500. And
oh, yeah.
And I had been drinking whiskey since I was an exchange student, but I was only a consumer. I wasn't really a student of, But we also went to Loch Ness. And while we were at Loch Ness at the Urquhart Castle looking over it, this giant helicopter comes down and starts to land. And then there's a boat out in the loch, and this helicopter hovers above the boat. And then all these ropes come out and all these people start rappelling out of the helicopter down onto the boat. I was like, this is not what I expect to see. I mean, not that I expected to see.
Inverness, certainly not.
I have all these photos of it. And it turned out it was like a Coast Guard training
Oh, that is wild. I mean, it's a massive body of water in terms of like training, I guess. So that makes sense. But Inverness in and of itself is super quiet and, doesn't, not a whole lot ever going on there. So, but obviously a really great area for sure. That's too funny. I didn't see that when I was there. So
yeah, I mean, I've never seen that in my life anyway.
In general.
But for a split second, I was like, well, maybe they found a monster. I don't know.
They're actually just going to like lift it up almost like Godzilla style, just like with the net, and then it just like reaches out of the ground. There you go. Doomsday.
But, one of the things that someone has said to me, and I think it's really interesting, it's a testament to what you do, is when you have a really good brand, your job isn't to convince people it's good. It's to convince them to taste it. And the rest of it just takes care of itself.
Yeah. Yeah. I get to work for, I of course we're talking about Bruichladdich, but I would say every single product that I represent underneath my portfolio, it's never like, hey, try this new thing. It's, it's exciting. And we're made it in our bathtub and da-da-da-da-da. It's like, this is all really amazing product with amazing stories and terroir and like taste and just all of it that, it's a very easy way to romanticize it without needing to romanticize it.
And it's one of the things that's really interesting to me is how that has evolved over the last couple of decades since Bruichladdich been reopened. And I had this thing here that I was going to read if I could, and maybe I won't. Maybe that's a little bit too dry, but it about
the story time for some people, we might.
Okay, all right. So basically, this at the beginning when Bruichladdich was reopened, let's say 2001, 2002, right around there, when and the distillery was broke, and so the only thing they could do is get creative by getting casks that nobody else wanted at the time, and so the extreme experimentation and creativity was sort of born of necessity, not just a sort of a dilettante kind of thing. And at the time, this is so funny because we made the film, we came across a lot of this. At the time, like even doing a wine finished whiskey was considered absolutely insane. Just, it was criticized, and, but now that's become incredibly common. But then like with the Turnery project, now I have this open here in front of me. This went from, so 15 years ago, you're talking about a cask, ex-bourbon cask, finished in a wine cask for 6 months.
Whatever, yeah.
Right. Now you have second fill ex-bourbon hogsheads before being recast into French red wine, then Pedro Jimenez sherry butts from Fernando de Castillo. Then add Port Charlotte spirit, which is filled in a combination of first fill bourbon, first fill Oloroso sherry cask, and a first fill virgin oak. Then Octomore super is in Sauternes cask French Mourvèdre, Austrian sweet wine, Amarone, and bourbon cask. Like the sophistication of that is insane. Like I couldn't memorize it. I tried.
Well, and for even people that I would say, even Adam even says this, and he's not joking. It's people will ask him like, okay, well, in 2007, you released the such and such. Do you remember what cask you're using? He's like, honestly, I'll have to go back to it because we have such a long stream of just insane releases, especially like we were mentioning at the beginning when we were like doing 3 a week or 2 a week or whatever. As to now we are like more methodically listed, like thinking about what we want to do and what we want it to taste like. And I say what Adam and, who's tasting it wants it to be at the end result. But overall, I think we have such a large book of what we've made and where we've come from that, talking about how unique we are is almost underselling it because it is just this conundrum of just here's the bottle and here's what's inside. It's insane. Yeah, truly.
And, it absolutely is. I mean, and it's almost like a symphony. Mm-hmm. There's so many parts that you're only hearing them as a collective. You couldn't possibly someone has to build them up, but you in your head, at least I can't. And I think very few people can sort of no one's going to taste it and rattle off that cask.
Oh, no. I mean, for the most part, I think if you're a geek and you like to get into flavor profile and all that, we can certainly pick up, there's a wine cask of some sort in this. Sure. There's a bourbon cask because there's vanilla notes or whatever. You can pick up certain nuances that are maybe floating out of what you're tasting. but I wouldn't be able to say like, this is a second fill American oak reuse. It's like, there's no way that I would be able to do something like that. But yeah, that's the beauty of it. That's why, he's the mad scientist behind it all. And Jim before him, it's a good thing I'm not doing it, because I don't know what I'd be able to come up with. Maybe good stuff, maybe not. But I mean, I sometimes being in that warehouse, it's like, a chef in a kitchen. It's like every single spice you could possibly ever think of is like right in front of you to cook with. And it's just a matter of you trying to find the particular blend and taste that you're looking for. It's a really tough job, I'm sure.
It's really, how many, was it you who told me, someone told me there are 160 different types of casks right now in the warehouse?
Yeah, I think it was either me or it might've been Jason. I think we're up to like 180 or 200, but I could be wrong. But yeah, types and varietals. So we're talking like, so we have a bourbon cask, but that bourbon cask came from such and such. And then we have wine casks, but here's like the tree of all the different wine casks that we have. It's insanity when you walk the warehouse and you're like, every single aisle is like something different. And obviously we haven't even seen some of the stuff that even exists, because it's like, Jim kind of put it to the back, so we can't even see it. So some of these releases that come out, we are kind of almost like mind blown, because, we didn't even know we had that kind of cask or that kind of expression floating around or anything like that. And that's like the beauty of what makes it such a fun distillery to work for, because it's just constantly reinventing itself over and over and over again. So
it's interesting to, you and I were talking about this the other day, and I wanted to bring it up. So this is a really good example of what we're talking about. This is the core expression of Bruichladdich, the classic laddie. So this isn't some one-off like the Ternary project. It's just this
right.
crazy experiment. This is the thing you can buy most places. And even within the classic laddie, every batch is a tiny bit different.
Mm-hmm.
In case anyone doesn't know, I don't know that I'm going to be able to effectively do this here on this camera.
No, it's the black digits on the back.
Right
there. Oh, yeah, there you go. There it is.
And if you enter this code into the website, if you go to bruichladdich.com, you go to the Classic Laddie page, enter, it will tell you what I just said about the Ternary project. It'll list how many of every cask, when they were, and it changes over time. I have an early 2020 bottle, and this is a late 2020 bottle. It doesn't have the month, but it was batch 182, so it's going to be late in the year.
Later in the year. Yeah.
And it evolves. It's more of a consistent style than an identical replica.
Yep, bingo. And I think I always say that is I always kind of hone in of, it's never going to be like exactly the same, like to the nth degree, but we want it to be as close to it as possible. Right. However, in doing that, we're not blending, we're not bringing in the same stuff every single time to make this like the same thing. And it's the same thing, and we're pushing it out and it tastes the same. I mean, in a sense, when we're talking about classic laddie, which is literally, we talk about it as like the bread and butter of like kind of the baseline of our distillery. Even the fact that it's unpeated is a little kind of like, wait, what? Like your main one isn't peated. Like that's crazy too. But I think classic laddie, we look for consistency of taste profile, like the viscosity of it, just all of it, right? We want everything to kind of be almost exactly the same, but in doing so, weather changes, casks change, age changes, all of that kind of stuff. So Adam has to essentially get back in and figure out, okay, well, we need a little bit more of this and a little less of this. And again, I always reference a chef, because it's like, sometimes when you make a certain meal, you might need to add an extra little bit of salt or an extra little whatever to make it taste how you want it to. And I always say that with Adam, because he has all of those different casks, but sometimes he's got to like change them out, which is what you essentially saw when you looked it up. So
yeah, it's interesting because they're always very, it's definitely very similar. It's not, but it's like, I always say it's like a favorite style of apple that you might have. If you love a Macintosh apple, or you love a Pink Lady apple. Yeah. I might eat an apple, another Pink Lady. I don't mean a different variety of apple, but it's an agricultural product, and it, is susceptible to nature, and so is barley, and so is wood, and but you told me a story the other day that I would love to talk about making your own. Can you tell that story for a second?
So I actually created my own whiskey in a bathtub. No, I'm just kidding. Everybody's like, okay, and I'm canceling this chat. See you later. So we essentially, being so now my team essentially is what's called the brand development team. So we're a modge podge of a lot of different people in the US, but we're still considered to be ambassadors for Bruichladdich, which is fantastic. So every year we are able to go out to the distillery. Typically we have everybody from all over the globe there. So it's China, it's UK, it's South Africa, it's here, it's Canada, it's all over. And we have all these different personalities and, translations to make sure people understand what we're saying and all of that kind of stuff, which is super unique as well. So the whole thing is we try to obviously share best practices, learn from each other, be together. But Adam loves to at the end of the week when we're all really rested, because we haven't spent any time staying up or drinking in the anything at all. He likes to do a little bit of a project. So we all get together and we make the closest of style to classic Lottie that we can get. And so he lines up all of these samples that he's pulled literally that day from the cask. And you don't have a recipe sheet. You don't have here's what the last batch looked like or anything like that. You have to go solely on, you have a bottle of classic Lottie to, reference. So you have a dram of that, but then you have about 30 samples of, virgin cask, American cask, bourbon cask, wine casks, all kinds of different stuff. And you have to essentially do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, and then you make your own classic Lottie vial. And then at the end of the week, Adam and a selection of judges will present the winner of who they think comes the closest. I think a lot of the time it's in good fun and all that, but it's a really fun exercise because you just realize how incredibly hard it probably is and how gifted he is to be able to do that over and over and over again. And the real truth of the matter is it's really fun to see people that have had already three or four responsible drinks during the night. And then they go try and make the actual batch. And it's probably not you did that a little backwards. You probably should have started making the batch and then drank and then go back to it. But it's fun. We have a good time with it every year. So
I think that sounds like it'd be a lot of fun. I mean,
it's fun. Yeah.
It would be intimidating, but it'd be pretty fun too.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So we've got lots of comments coming up, but not any questions yet. So anyone who's watching, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and I will relay them. But we've got a couple. I'll just rattle through a few here of the comments we've got. We've got Doug McRae. Happy Friday from upstate New York. Our friend Dave Kuhn, who tunes in all the time. It is kind of like that. I actually agree. Kevin Krause said hello, but he was going to bed because he's in Australia. Our friend Mark Pruitt says hello and welcome, Erica. So
thank you guys, appreciate it.
Kevin Kiley says he loves these videos. Well, thanks, Kevin. So this is not in the film, and I wish it was, but unfortunately, Jim told me this story last week, not while we were making the film. But he talked to me about when he had decided that Adam and Alan were sort of his apprentices, and one of the things he did with them to sort of train them is a variation of what you just said. He said when he was going to make a new blend, he would have them pull all the cask samples. Then he would go mix up a bunch of different versions. He would choose the one that was going to be the right one, but he wouldn't mark it. He would just know which one it was going to be. And then he would make them come in and choose which was the right one. And no matter what they chose, whether it was his or not, they had to defend it and explain why this was the one they were choosing and why and then if it wasn't the right one, he would say, well, don't you think this is missing this or has too much of this? And they would sort of, and he said one of the side effects of it was that it made them start paying attention even while they were pulling cask samples. Like when it would have just been easy to say 4978 and go pull a sample.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like here is essentially the book of everything that I have made. Now keep the legacy of Bruichladdich intact and go forth and conquer, right? Like it seems so easy for a distiller to be able to just pass down everything from what he's done and then have it just almost, mimicked in a way. But I think what's been really the beautiful story, and I mean, you guys even make a nod to it in the movie, is, you know, Jim is who he is, and he is a legacy and all of those things. And when, you know, the team was starting to kind of get absorbed underneath him and learn, and then the next generation of, you know, head distiller, now Adam, and, you know, Alan and all of that kind of stuff, you know, I think to some degree, he wanted to kind of, you know, help pass the torch, but he also trusted everything that Adam was going to be able to do. And I think Adam really takes that heavily into consideration as well. I you know, it's why he calls himself a head distiller still and doesn't call himself a master, because he essentially says that he learned from a master, and he's going to eventually hopefully get there. But you know, he's still consistently learning, which I think is very humbling to say. But I think, you know, the black art story is a really good one, because Jim actually, as like on this, the story is as it goes, and Adam will maybe even talk a little bit better about this. But on his last day, Jim essentially, you know, was giving the keys over to Adam, and they had just wrapped up, you know, black art expression, whatever. And Jim was like, hey, you know, here's kind of what we're thinking for the next one, you know, here, you know, put it on a Post-it, I think is how it goes, left it on the desk and walked out the door. And Adam essentially kind of like didn't even look at it, crumpled it up and threw it in the trash can. Not because it was like a disrespectful thing, but he just knew that like it was Jim kind of testing him. He's like, he knows he can trust me, but now he's really testing me to like do it. And so I think that just goes to show you as the respect from, you know, him to where we are now is it speaks volumes, you know.
Yeah. You know, we have a couple of questions coming up. I'm going to get to them in a second, but I wanted to say something, you know, so we're talking a lot about Adam, and I wanted to bring this up. I'm going to share this right now. So we're doing, a lot of you may know this, but we're doing a series of events with Bruichladdich where every 2 weeks we're showing the film the film's not being shown every 2 weeks. It's being shown whenever people want, if they buy tickets to the event. But tomorrow we're actually having a sit-down conversation with Adam and with Fraser Matthews from the distillery. Oh. So the link to get those tickets is there on the on my screen, and there are still tickets available. And we're going to have a conversation with Adam for an hour, and people will be able to ask questions. So
it'll be far more enthralling than what I'm doing right now. Trust me, guys. Like, if you don't sign up, then you're missing out. I would say Adam and Fraser they have such a great banter back and forth that just watching them is enough. Like, you can just sit back. It's like watching a movie. I love hearing them talk. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. People always ask me, one of the questions I get, not all the time, but sometimes, is when did we know that when did we feel like we knew what the film was going to be? And I always give the same, because documentaries especially evolve as you're making them, you know, and I didn't set out to make a film that focused so much on Bruichladdich. It just became such a story that was so appealing, not just in the content and in the bottle. I mean, that's certainly its own thing, and that is, but the other thing was the story was so interesting, and the people were so interesting, and it was after the interview with Adam that I turned to our cinematographer and I said, we got it. This is it. Because Adam's interview was, you know, Jim's interview was, you know, we interviewed Jim on top of a cliff. You know what I mean? Like, it was big. And Adam's interview,
you're like, Jim just hangs out in the you know, warehouse all day, and there's like angels singing. And that's how they all see him.
The whiskey wizard has emerged from his cave.
Exactly. And, like, oh yeah.
But Adam's was a very deep, soulful, thoughtful interview, and it was just such a nice counterpoint. They're both great interviews, and they're both great whiskey makers, and there's a lot of respect and all that. But it was just the depth of thought and the sincerity was really, really moved me.
There's a lot to learn from Adam, and I think Adam, and I'll even, you know, say this, like, he's just somebody that I could listen to all the time, because he is like just a wealth of knowledge. And I think that even at his age, and I'm not saying like he's just this like wee little baby, but he's considered pretty young still. And I think he's awesome. He really is. And I think he doesn't take his job lightly. I think he knows that, you know, Adam started out in like the retail store at Bruichladdich. He didn't come in like with this like background of, I know all of what I need to know, and I'm just going to become a head distiller, and that's what I'm going to do. His stories and timeline of Bruichladdich is even interesting too. So I think that like he knows the job that he has and the legacy that he has of that of Bruichladdich, and he treads how he should.
So let's get into some questions here. This is a great question, and I'll let you answer it if you want. But this is about the movie, so I can answer it. But Keith Duncan asked, just finished watching the film for the umpteenth time. Anyone know what Jim was doing in the scene where he taps the barrels with the wooden mallet? Just curious.
You can answer that.
So, are you sure?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So he was tapping, which basically is a part of warehouse management where it sometimes casks leak, and you want to know they're leaking before they're empty. So they make a different noise if they're half empty as opposed to completely full. And over time, according to Jim, your ear gets really attuned to the slightest differentiation. So you would just, one of his jobs when he was young and would work as a warehouseman would walk down the aisles and just hit them. And if one of them kind of made that, you can imagine what a hollow barrel would sound like versus a full one. And that's, then you would check for leaks. So,
very scientific method. No, but honestly, it makes the most sense. I kind of always, I joke because I know that that's what he does. And I always say to people, because they say they can't tell how much whiskey they have left or scotch they have left in the classic Lottie bottle because it's, not transparent. I'm like, just tap it, just like how Jim does. You'll just listen to it. You'll be able to tell how much is left in the bottle.
That's a good point. I've never done that.
Like
I would just hold it up to it.
Yeah, exactly. I just kind of put it against the light or whatever. It's more of a joke than anything else.
Well, you can hold the classic Laddie up to a light and see through it. You can't with black art. You can't. You can't even hold it up to the sun and see through it.
Yeah, so. That is 100% on purpose. They're like, no, you need to just figure out what's going on in this one. So,
the next question is from Nick Kent. And he says, has Adam let on how long he'd have to be in the job to be able to call himself a master distiller?
I think, and I'll let Adam answer this tomorrow, but I would say that Adam I don't know if he's ever going to know if he knows. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I think he believes that there will always be things for him to learn. And Jim, how long was he and still is in the industry in some capacity, whether it's teaching or whatever. And I think Adam just feels like he's scratched the surface of that, and he probably won't get to that point until he feels like he's even close to where, those legacies are. And I'm just speaking on behalf of Bruichladdich. There's a ton over in Islay that, the film even talks about that have been in it for so long that a lot of people that are coming in underneath them, they're fully aware of what the shoes that need to be filled. So in so many words. So.
I thought maybe it was like a Highlander thing where he has to defeat Jim in a sword fight.
Yeah, probably go find the Loch Ness monster. It's like one of those, like just come right back.
It's funny when you were saying about it's very scientific about tapping casks. One of the things that our producer Trevor always tells this story was Jim was talking to us about making botanist gin for the first time. Mm. And I don't remember what he was adding, but he was going to add something right before it started to boil. And he showed, there was a picture and in the picture, he was basically pouring liquid onto his hand. And he said, I had to make sure it wasn't boiling, but it was close. And Trevor was like, you didn't use a thermometer. You just dumped nearly boiling spirit onto your hand. He said, well, you'd know if it was really hot, but you don't want to. It's like, but
it reminds me of like the Back to the Future. Hopefully those of you out there love that movie as much as I do. And Doc goes up to the car and he's like, and then Michael's like, what is it? Is it hot? And he's like, it's cold. It's damn cold. And he's like, he jumps away from it. And I'm like, maybe don't do that. Like, you don't want to pour this hot liquid onto yourself. Like, probably not the greatest idea, but that sounds about right. I'm not really surprised.
Absolutely. Mark Pruitt has a question next. Sure. What are some of the things? This is all you. What are some of the things coming up in the future of the distillery that you're excited about?
Well, I mean, this is a good launch into festival talk, I think. We have every single year a festival that celebrates almost the island of Islay in a sense in the Scotch industry. So every distillery will host their share of the festival events on different days. So Ardbeg, Romore, all of them will all get involved. And this year, just like last year, we're having to do this virtually, but we are going to celebrate again. If you guys weren't a part of it last year, it was an immense amount of fun. We had music, we had speakers, we had Adam, he did tastings, all that kind of stuff. And last year, I would almost say that the team was testing it to see, is this something that we can do in the future, and not even so much just the festival, but anything. And I think it was really well received. So because we're kind of in the same scenario, we don't want like hundreds of people showing up at our distillery right now. We're doing it again virtually. So a great way, if you're interested in even seeing what this may look like, it's a great way to see it without actually traveling to Islay. Hopefully you'll get the chance to go to the actual festival week at some point in some time, just like me, I'm dying to go. But the way that you can kind of sign up is just on our website and get the newsletter, and it'll tell you essentially how to sign up to get notifications about the festival. You'll be able to get involved, but you do have to get a ticket. Tickets are free, which is great steal of a deal. But you do have to have a ticket in order to join the festival. You can't just like jump on. So highly recommend that. I think that I would be remiss to say that there will be a lot of noteworthy things that Adam will talk about that are being released soon. For the festival itself, I think we have 3 bottles this year. So that's super fun because usually I think we only have 1, maybe 2. So that's always fun. And then at the end we do a not an auction, but you can get on and bid. That's what it is. It's a bidding war of essentially getting these items that you can't find out in the wild. So maybe it was an expression that Jim made that has been centuries ago and it's the last remaining bottle. So you can go in and bid on those particular items, which is also super fun, and just see what they even have to bid on. I think that was always fun last year. So again, you already put it up, bruichladdich.com. Just sign up for the newsletter. You'll immediately get notified for the festival and go ahead and sign up.
That's all. I was part of the Laddie lock-in last year. We showed a trailer of the film.
Yeah.
And it meant, because I'm in California, it meant getting up and drinking some classic Laddie with
you and me both.
Akron at 8:00.
I remember getting up really early, and I still was like, I think they were already 2 hours into the festival, and I was like, okay. So I made myself, I think, like a highball. I was like, it's a little early for this, or maybe I did my peated Bloody Mary. I did make a peated Bloody Mary. That's what I did first. So that's where I started. And then I kind of just made a highball in the afternoon and just kept watching. It's great fun. And I think what's really unique is at the festival, because there's so many things going on, you don't get the chance to see some of the personalities behind the scenes. And I think Laddie Lock-In really showed like everyone's personality. Just all of it. It was great fun. Highly recommend it if you have nothing to do.
I'm looking forward to it. I signed up for the lottery for the tasting set.
Nice. Yes. And I don't think I even mentioned what day it was. It's going to be on ours is on May 30th. So
yeah, Sunday, right? It's a Sunday.
Yes.
Yeah, so a month from today.
Yeah, exactly.
Go get your tickets.
Go get your tickets now.
Yeah, I'm much more looking forward to going back to Islay, but I haven't been in. I guess. Well, that's 2 years now. I guess it's been, because I was in Scotland in November.
Oh, when you guys were filming, it's probably been 2 years since then. Yeah.
Well, we did an advanced screening 2 years ago at Ardnahoe, and then we were, the Event Horizon was the Bruichladdich thing, and my wife and I went to that. So
good.
But I was in Scotland once since then, but I didn't make it to Islay that trip. It was just to show the film in Glasgow, and then we went to Germany and showed it there at the village in Nuremberg.
The Germans like to have their fair share of Scotch, so I'm not really surprised that you went there.
Well, Jim is like Mick Jagger in Germany.
Man, it's so funny because one of my the other ambassadors, so his name is Ewald. He oversees.
Sure. Yeah, I met him when I was there.
Yeah. I'm sorry. No, I'm just kidding. So Ewald that's exactly how they describe Jim and Adam. They're like, it's like a rock star coming into town, like sells out tickets right away. And like, it's overseas versus America is very different in terms of the Scotch world. And I think we're coming around to it more and more, like every single month of every year. Sure. But it's wild to see, Japan, China, Germany, like all these places where it's like, they're like literally like so in love with them. It's crazy.
We did an event with Jim and it was in Turnau outside of Nuremberg, the Celtic Castle Festival, and Jim had an autograph session afterwards, and there was like a line out the door of this castle, and I had 2 bottles of whiskey, and I was standing behind the table. One of our cameramen was filming. There's actually shots in the movie of you see Jim signing autographs, and so we were behind the table, behind Jim, and I had 2 bottles of whiskey sitting there, and he was in this sort of autograph frenzy, and he just signed those and put them back. So I didn't even know he was going to. I just all of a sudden my bottles of whiskey were well. Yeah, I kind of jumped the queue a little bit, I guess.
That worked out.
Yeah. One of them is, I got to say, we just started selling this thing today. We're doing this charity event with Jim for the Air Ambulance of Scotland. And I have to admit, we created 2 tasting sets that kind of tell Jim's, one of them tells Bruichladdich story, or a little smaller version of Jim's story, but one is his entire career as told in whiskey. And one of them is the Bruichladdich Resurrection Dram. And if you've seen the film, there's a scene in the film where Mark Renier talks about trying the old Bruichladdich. We managed to get that and put that in the tasting kit as well. So you can drink the 2 side by side.
How do I get my hands on one of these kits?
They are. That seems like a setup, but it wasn't. I'm glad you asked.
No, it wasn't. I actually I'm really interested in that.
Well, they're for sale right now. They went on sale today because we're doing this whole thing where it's all, Jim chose the Scotland's charity Air Ambulance as his charity of choice. And so we're doing this event with him on May 23rd. It's not a tasting. It's a conversation with him. And, his autobiography came out. And so that's part of it and everything. And there's the link where people can go there.
There we go. I think Jim and his wife, both lovely, lovely individuals. And Simon for just the whole team, they're all heavily involved with anything that you can give back. So I love that they're doing that. That's awesome. And
it's really inspiring. And, we were thrilled to be able to do it with him. And it was pretty interesting. We were working with Dramful to assemble the different old bottles through auctions and stuff like that. And that was a lot of fun. Yeah. Although I have to say it led me down a deep whiskey auction hole.
You're like, someone stop me. This is bad. I feel like I'm in Vegas and I'm gambling all my money away. This is not good.
It's like you have this moment, you're like, how could I not bid on that?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I feel like that's even some of the stuff that happened at the festival. I even bid on a couple things, but I'm so glad they went for what they went for because it's so well deserved. But some of them are just so interesting. Like, how can I not even try to get this? This is insane. So, yeah.
Well, we don't have the details yet on this, but we're actually going to do another big charity event all over the UK. Yeah. And one of the big parts of that is going to be the silent. We're going to do a charity silent auction. We've had a lot of different distilleries donate bottles to us.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And at the very beginning, I was getting these distilleries saying we could do this and this, and I was so excited. And then one day it just dawned on me. I was like, I'm not going to be able to afford. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I'm not going to be able to afford any of these.
Awesome, but I can't even afford one of these. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, because that's the thing. You recognize their worth, right? It's not like some like bottle of whatever, and I'll get it because so and so signed it. It's much different than that. Yeah.
But best case scenario, all I am is the wine steward who's going to deliver the bottle. I'm not going to get to drink. I need some white gloves.
Tell me how it is.
Yeah, maybe I'll just stick around for a while.
Yeah, like if you want to give me a half ounce or ounce, just pop that bad boy open. I wouldn't be objecting to that.
I just so happen to have this empty little 50 ml bottle here with me.
Pull it right out of your pocket, like, oh well, I already went through this fancy one, so maybe I need to fill it with another fancy one.
One of the things that it's pretty common knowledge to anyone who's really followed our film or the rollout we did, and I say it all the time, is this was not our original distribution plan. Our original distribution plan was a little more what I would say the normal one. I think now it's the old normal. I don't know that it's ever going to return, which is this sort of film festival route, art house theaters for documentaries, if you're lucky. All of those things are great. It was starting to, before the pandemic, that whole business model was kind of starting to creak under its own weight. But so we've done all this online rollout, and we've done so many events with so many different people. And I know that, like I told you yesterday, we will go over time because I blether. And so we are over time again. But I did want to say this real quick, because one of the things that, we're doing is a lot of partnerships with whiskey clubs, sometimes like brick and mortar whiskey clubs, online groups, some charities, stuff like that. Now we're doing this thing with Bruichladdich, where we're doing the people of Bruichladdich. And by the way, Adam, like we said earlier, is tomorrow, but in 2 weeks, we're going to get to talk to Simon Coughlin and Chloe
Another
Wood.
legend.
Yeah, I mean, Simon is one of the co-founders of the Resurrected Bruichladdich, and the last man standing of that group. Simon, every time I've met him, he teases me that he's not more in the film than he is, but he wasn't in Scotland when we shot the film. It's not my fault.
I can't imagine Simon ever joking around ever. That's not his personality whatsoever.
But so one of the things, I just wanted to mention quick is, in case any of you guys know Mash and Drum YouTube channel, great whiskey reviewer. We're doing a thing with him. The details are still to come. So, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, because we don't have a date, for example, yet, but we're really looking forward to doing a sort of big hybrid online thing, talking with him and with Bruichladdich and showing the film and stuff like that. So I just wanted to share his YouTube channel there, but you'll be able to find it all over our social media. We have an events page.
It'll be flooding all over. So you'll get newsletters from Bruichladdich, and then you'll get all of these as well. So it's just fun browsing for everybody. Yeah. I think you and I were talking about it. It's right now there's not a whole, there are some movie theaters open depending on where you live. Mine, even here in Georgia, there's not a lot still open. So right now, content wise, like whatever you're, willing or able to do, but it's also like, now this is like in my living room, and I can just watch it at the comfort of my couch. And I get this chance to talk to the director or co-creator. It's just it's a totally different way of really humanizing a project, and really making it just feel like, wow, this is the love and effort that went into this film. And then you being able to ask questions, it's like another level of really, really cool fun.
There you go. Nick Kent says Mash and Drum is a great channel.
It's okay.
Well, there you go. Oh, hey, Dram Fine Podcast. They were my guests last week.
Hey.
Hello, Pam and Chelsea. Or one or the other of you. I don't know. I just
whoever's typing on the Instagram right now.
Yeah. But one of the things that we've had a lot of fun doing, and I think we've been pretty successful at doing it, is because people are watching movies at home, we've been able to literally pair whiskey with the movie. Mm-hmm. We're allowed by law. Like we've managed to ship tasting kits and different things and sell bottles and do different things that are related to those things. And that's been a lot of fun, because we know that when we did our first rollout, we actually put little colored
the
indicators. Yeah. And then you would drink the whiskey that was color coded in the kit to go with that part of the movie. And I think we're going to do that some more.
I will say, and whoever thought of that was, really smart. I think number one, it kind of just makes it fun, and you feel invested in the movie. You're like, ooh, next one, like you go to the next one. But also it's very important, because there are quite a few drams. So like, if you're like just kind of getting lost in like the loveliness of the movie, then you're like, oh, that's another color. I gotta get my dram out.
Yeah, well, originally we were going to have like lower thirds where it said, Classic Laddie across the bottom.
Right. Like spelling all out.
And then we were like, no, because then people have to like go read in the dark on the kit to find which ones. So we're like, let's just make them all color coded. And then the cool thing with that is we can change out the expressions without changing out the brand.
Yeah.
Like we could do a different Glenallachie where the Glenallachie introduction scene is. We can just do a different
Islay Barley or, whatever. It's
exactly. Yeah.
It's such a fun thing. It's fun to taste. I always say this whenever I'm in Bruichladdich could not taste more like what I expected it to. I'll be sitting around like Port Charlotte, and I'm drinking a Port Charlotte. I'm like, this smells like the air and tastes like whatever. And I think that's kind of what is really fun about the movie too, is that, you're hearing about the distillery, you're, seeing everybody there and all that kind of stuff. And then you're like drinking and you're like, oh, I feel like I'm kind of like almost there. I'm being like morphed into Islay right now, which is really fun. So.
Well, we've gone 15 minutes over already, and I have to say it's been an absolute pleasure, and it flew by. It always does. It's
30
amazing.
Minutes is a quick one. That's like a quick fire. I mean, I like you. I'm sure you've been on many where you're like, yeah, it'll be about an hour and a half, and like 2.5 hours later, you're like, yay, like whatever. So it's Totally okay.
I do a lot of events with Jim, so
well, then you're talking 5 hours. Like, you need to put half of a day aside because that man can literally just talk. He has the most legendary stories of, his daughter Lynn is also, she's a trip and a half to listen to and listen about stories about her father or their family. There was one and this will be one of the last ones I talk about, but she told me this one story that growing up, obviously, with Jim heavily involved with the distillery and all that kind of stuff, there was mornings, obviously, that he would be heading off to whatever country to go and do a master tasting or whatever. And she was like, there was this one time that she remembers really vividly that a helicopter just landed like in their backyard, basically, to go and like pick him up and take him to the next destination. I'm like, yeah, only Jim could have like a helicopter land right there and then just pick him up, almost like Loch Ness style, like pick him up and just like drop him where they need to drop him. But yeah, no, her stories are also just super, super interesting to listen to. So I'm not surprised that he takes forever.
One of the things that she said the other week when we did the first People of Bruichladdich with her, she said it was cool. She said that as a little girl, she never realized how remote Islay is because so many people from around the world came to visit her parents.
Yeah, that is so
it just didn't seem like, you just have like 8 people from Japan show up for dinner. So it's just, you don't feel like you're in a remote place.
I remember the very first time, and I think I've told her the story because it's an embarrassing story, but starting with the distillery, I knew who Jim was. I knew who Adam was. I knew all this stuff. And so when you are able to go as in terms of a brand ambassador, they take the utmost care of you. You are treated just wonderfully over there. It is my restore kind of opportunity when I go over there because it's just, top service. So I remember the first time that I went over there and they send the agenda of like what you're going to do. And granted, I'd never even had like Bruichladdich intense training yet. So I hadn't really met any faces. I knew what Adam looked like. I knew kind of a few people. So they said, okay, the first time or the first night, this person will pick you up. They'll take you from the airport to your Airbnb, drop you off, get you refreshed, and then you're going to have dinner with Lynn. And I was like, oh, that's so nice that they set us up with like somebody on the, on Islay to like have dinner with or whatever. So we're like talking through everything. And when she introduces herself, because this is how Lynn is, she doesn't say like, I'm Lynn McEwen. Like, it's just, that's not her style at all. So we're just talking about stuff. She's talking about Jim. And then she finally was like, yeah, and my dad, and I was like, wait, your dad? It finally registered to me. I was like, oh God, you're his daughter. And you're very involved in Bruichladdich. It's not just this like, just person that, kind of is involved with the distillery. But no, she's everyone that works at Bruichladdich is a trip and a half. They all have their own very distinct personalities. And I think, Adam and Fraser are just going to be hilarious and really interesting to watch. So
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to, be part of it. And when I did the thing with Lynn the other week, I just tried my best. It was Lynn and Joanne Boyd. And I just tried my best to just sort of be quiet and just watch like a fan.
So Joanne was my very first encounter when I got to Islay. She drove. Were you ever in the company of her driving you anywhere? Was that ever? So the running joke is Joanne is like this crazy driver. If she ends up watching this, she's going to laugh her butt off at it. But she drives like a bat out of hell. She is like on a mission. She is just like going down those, coastal roads, like no big deal. And if you have ever been to Islay, you know how narrow the roads are, how often sheep cross it, how bumpy they are, all that kind of stuff. So everybody's always like buckling up when they get in the car with Joanne because they just know it's going to be this like bullet train that gets you to the other side of the island. But no, she's also a very amazing wealth of knowledge as well. All of them are. So. Yeah. Well,
thank you so much for your time and stories. And this has been fun. And I'm tempted to tell you a story. It's not my story; it's Jim's story. But he told us. I've heard most of Jim's stories multiple times now because I've spent so much time with him and interviewed him 8 times.
And you're probably drinking and all of that.
But there's a story he tells about when he worked at Bowmore about this guy named Angus who would steal whiskey by pouring it into his wellies. And which he just thought was the grossest thing in the world because foot whiskey.
What's the running thing? Like the Scotch, some of the Scottish people will drink the boot and stuff or whatever. And I'm like, whoa, like so gross. But that's him actually stealing whiskey in his wellies is a different thing altogether.
Yeah.
They're like yum, peak whiskey.
There you go. There's Adam's next experiment.
What will we come up with next? Ooh, I get notes of vanilla and this, and a little bit of grass and sweat. I'm not really sure where I'm picking that up from, but
cheese.
It's kind of bizarre. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Erica. I really appreciate it. And
absolutely.
I'm really looking forward
appreciate being on. I appreciate being on and all of that.
When we do the mash and drum thing, I hope that, however that shapes up, that you'll be part of that as well.
Oh, yeah. I'll be on. Don't worry. I wouldn't miss it. Either that or I'll just be like spiraling in the comments over and over and over again, just asking a ton of questions just to grill you guys.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, have fun tomorrow night. Everyone, if you don't have a ticket, I'm just going to say it.
Yes.
Go ahead and get it.
I put the link up one last time there. It's on. Just go to our website if that's too much. I don't realize that's a whole mouthful of stuff to try to type down. And Bruichladdich Saturdays is a mess to look at. But it's just a lot of letters there. But
especially if you've already had like a drink or two, you're like, what is
that? Just go to waterlifefilm.com. You can find it from there. So anyway, have a great Friday, everyone. Have a great dram. Oh, and cheers. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.